Hello, it's Peter back again, the owner of Kaffeine, and today I'm going to have a bit of a talk to you about basically opening your shop and what I experienced in the first 6 months of opening here. So you may remember that I opened exactly on the date that I wanted to, August the 14th, 2009. Some of you may remember around that time was a pretty serious recession. Things were pretty miserable, people weren't very happy. And you'll also know that from the stories I've told you before, that in London itself at that time, or around that period, there wasn't very many specialty or Australian style coffee shops. And so when I opened in here, we were one of the first. On the first Saturday, we took around £75 in revenue for coffee. So that's probably around 30 coffees that we made for the entire day. And I remember on that very first Saturday when a lady who still lives just up the street here, she came in and she said, "Welcome to Titchfield Village. It's so good to have a lovely shop in this area. You're going to do really well." And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing. Thank you very much." Now, we were open from 7:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. And you know, my wife used to work down the street, and you know that she was pregnant with our first child by about 4 or 5 months. And so I would get here at 6 o'clock, 6:30 to open the shop. We would close the shop at 6 o'clock, and then my wife would come down and sit down and wait for me, and we would pack up the shop at the time. I had 4 staff working for me, 2 baristas. One of them, her name is Catherine, and she is still to this day one of the very best employees I ever had. Another barista called Shem, a young lady called Ray on service, and our chef in the kitchen. And so yeah, you'd be working 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock every day, working on a Saturday as well, and very luckily we were closed on a Sunday. And Sunday, basically I'd wake up, have breakfast, have coffee, and fall back to sleep, absolutely exhausted. In those days, like I said, things were very good. And to be able to get people to come into my shop, which had great music, fantastic food, welcoming hospitality, and delicious coffee, and people didn't have any expectations of what this sort of shop was like. So it was really easy for us to exceed people's expectations. It was really easy for us to actually get people addicted to our coffee. And I remember people coming in and saying, "Hey, your coffee's so good, I can't get enough of it." I even remember people coming in and saying, "Hey, are you Australian?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "You must know what you're doing. This is a great coffee shop." Thanks very much. I also remember in that first few weeks, we had a food safety visit from Westminster Council. We weren't very good. We got 1 star, and we had a notice to improve. There are quite a few things we were missing. We got quickly onto that, and very quickly we had 5 stars on food safety. My wife was pregnant at the time, and I remember coming home in around October, and I lay down next to her and started crying. And I just said to her, "Seriously, I can't do this. This is too hard." And she said, "You have to. You have to get up and you have to go." And she said a few swear words, "And you have to do it." And so we did. I get to December 2009, and I realise I need to pay my rent on December the 25th, the next 3 months. And I realise that I don't have enough money in the bank. So I ring the landlord's agent, and he says, "What you can do is give me 3 cheques, 1 for each month, so December, January and February, and I'll only bank them at the end of each month, and that will help with your cash flow." So he did that for us, and if he didn't do that, I wouldn't be here today. On January the 26th, on exactly the date that she was due, our Layla was born. And I can look back and I can see that my bank balance at the time, after paying my rent, was £1,500. That's all the money I had in the bank. And very luckily, from that moment on, for some reason or other, the bank balance started to go up and the business started to get busier. And it was in February 2010 at the European Coffee Symposium held in Rome that we were awarded Best Independent Coffee Shop in Europe. The story behind this store, though, is amazing because it's owned by a family called the Frumpkins. And the Frumpkins are a Jewish family, and they used to have their own Jewish kosher wine shop exactly in this building. And they ran it from the 50s up until the 80s. And then there was one stage when 2 little old ladies came into the shop, one quite older than the other, and they said to me, "Is Peter here?" And I said, "Oh, that's me." And they said, "Hello, I'm Mrs. Frumpkin." And I was like, "Oh my God." And so basically Mrs. Frumpkin, the original, and her daughter had come in to see what I'd done to the shop. And the daughter said, "Look, this is amazing. I used to work behind the counter here with my dad back in the day. What you've done to this shop is beautiful. We want to support you. We want to help you. Thank you so much for looking after our business." And that's a bit of the story about the first 6 months of opening a business here called Kaffeine.